Hey there, it's Corey with Ascend Smarter Intervention, where we make research-based reading intervention easy. And today I wanted to provide just a quick intervention tip for you. So one of the most important things that we need to do before we start intervention is we need to make sure that we understand where students' needs lie. This can be really challenging because sometimes we feel like we're over-assessing or that we're gathering too much data or that we're spending too much time on assessment. And I completely understand. That concern is absolutely valid. However, if we don't know where students are struggling, we really can't provide targeted intervention, which means that we are losing time later on. We essentially are not necessarily saving time by skipping out on assessments, because what that means is that when we're providing intervention as we go, we may or may not be targeting the right things for each of our individual students. So it's really key that we know where students' gaps are at in reading. When we look at intervention, we always want to look at data in one of 5 areas. So as we're looking at these students, we want to make sure we're assessing in all 5 areas, but we can do that individually and we can do that over time. So if you feel like I don't have time to provide an entire assessment all at once, you can definitely sprinkle it in as you go, but it is important that you are getting data on each of these 5 core areas. The first area that we want to take a look at is phonological awareness. Phonological awareness is a foundational building block for students, especially young students, but even for older students, in understanding how sounds blend together to create words and how those sounds come apart so that we can spell words. So it's really critical when we're working on sounding words out that we have the phonological awareness and the understanding of how sounds come together and how they pull apart so that we can sound words out or that we can spell words effectively. Typically, what we want to do is we want to look at assessing phonological awareness in a hierarchy. There really is a foundational stepping stones or stepping blocks or stair steps, whatever you want to say, in terms of phonological awareness. We start with things as simple as segmenting sentences. So for example, if you said the word or the sentence, the cat sat on the mat, we need to be able to recognize the cat sat on the mat is 6 different words. That feels really elementary, but actually you'd be surprised that sometimes what happens is that students don't actually hear where those words are breaking. If you think about learning a foreign language, you might know this phenomenon where you're like, I have no idea because people speak so fast, like I do, in our native language. So that would be just one of the pieces that we would want to take a look at. Most functionally for reading and spelling, we want to understand, can students break words into their individual sounds? That's called phoneme segmenting. And can they take individual sounds and blend them together to create a word? That's called phoneme blending. If you can do nothing else in the terms of evaluating for phonological awareness, those would be the 2 areas that would be most critical to take a look at. Then you want to take a look at phonics. When we're looking at phonics knowledge, we really need to understand, do students understand what each of the individual letters say? In kindergarten and 1st grade, this is really common to be measuring for these things, but what happens is that phonics knowledge starts to fall off over time, and people don't continue to look for it once we get into 3rd grades, 4th grades, and beyond, even though sometimes those complex vowel teams, those patterns like T-I-O-N, shun, or D-G-E, j, might not be so automatic. So it's important that we have a really good understanding of, 1, what is our sound symbol knowledge? What do students know about those sound patterns? And then 2, what is their decoding ability, their ability to actually use those sounds and put them together in words? That would be phonics. You could also take a look at spelling as part of the flip side to that phonics coin. The third piece that we always want to take a look at is reading fluency. So once we know that students can decode words, or even if they can't, we really want to see how quickly they can put together words in context. When we're looking at reading fluency, we can actually look at 2 different things. So 1, just like I mentioned, we can look at reading fluency in context. That's reading a short sentence, a short passage, and just timing how many correct words do students have in 1 minute. We could also look at it in isolation and just look at it at the word level. How quickly can students read those words to you? That's an important building block as well. We definitely want to take a look at that. Then we want to take a look at vocabulary. Vocabulary can be really hard to measure, and one of the easiest ways that we put this together is we give students a list of real words and nonsense words all mixed together, and we ask them to identify the nonsense words. This is a great way, one, to see what their decoding looks like, but two, after we've made sure that decoding is accurate or we've provided the word if the decoding was inaccurate, then what we want to do is we want to see, can students recognize real words versus nonsense words? That's one of the easiest ways to get a really good idea of a student's vocabulary ability. The last thing that we want to take a look at is reading comprehension. Reading comprehension is critical. It's the entire reason that we learn to read, and so we need to make sure that students are comprehending what it is that they're reading. We have a few key buckets that we like to look at when we're looking at reading comprehension. We don't just want to give a big overall score and say they either got it or they don't. We want to know how that comprehension is breaking down. Can students identify a main idea? Can students sequence? Can students make inferences? Can they visualize? Can they use vocabulary appropriately? Can they direct recall information from the passage? We need to make sure that when students aren't comprehending, we know specifically where they're not comprehending. It may not be that they struggle with all areas of comprehension, but actually that they only struggle in one or two areas of comprehension. So, long story short, when we're evaluating for reading difficulty, we want to make sure we're looking at phonological awareness, phonics, reading fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. We'll link to the assessment that we use below just so that you have that in case you need some help there. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to let us know.